Hey YouTube, RicoKnows here. Just got done watching the draft last night. Took a quick nap. I really don't sleep. I just wait for the next day to start. You know, that's what I do. It's one of those Chuck Norris things. I don't go out hunting. I go out killing. So I revitalized. I'm ready. I woke up this morning. I thought about the draft all night, probably dreamed about it. I live streamed the draft. If you didn't know, go to YouTube, search RicoKnows, click on the live tab, and you'll see my live stream. Now, I noticed on my live stream, I apologize. Man, when I'm eating, you guys can hear me crunching. When I'm talking off cam and I'm talking to Kim in the kitchen, you guys can hear me. Didn't know. That's all good. Doesn't matter. I don't do anything wrong. I don't say anything inappropriate. It's just you guys can hear my whole life going down. And we had a good time last night. Hung out for about 4 hours. Saw an amazing draft. Saw a lot of picks go down and head scratchers and whatnot. And now that the first round is complete and I've had time to digest everything and ingest everything and dissect and analyze, I want to have an open conversation about my reaction to the first round and every pick. I usually break down every single team in a video at the end of the draft. And I'm still going to do that for TikTok. But if I can go a long-range format here and talk to you guys about the first round, I'd like to do that. So that's what I'm going to do here. So let's talk about it. First pick overall, Caleb Williams. You guys know about me. Like me personally, I'm not a Caleb Williams guy anymore. I haven't been since about October last year. And I tell you that NFL scouts concern me because they literally don't care how you play. Like they anoint you and they never ever like second guess themselves. And what I mean by that is, oh, they won't even show his stats anymore. Oh, my bad. I clicked on bio. There's stats. You go in here, you got to pick NCAA. And what I mean by that is if you go back and you look at last season, this last season with USC, 3,600 yards, 30 touchdowns, five interceptions. That sounds really good, but it's actually not all that great. I wish I could pull it up year by year or game by game, and they're not letting me. That's a damn shame. But every game, Caleb Williams got worse. You talk about dominating in the first 6 games of the season against teams like San Jose State, Nevada, Colorado, and then you look absolutely terrible once you hit conference play against competent defenses. And Caleb Williams, for me, doesn't play in structure very well. Yes, he's great once the play breaks down. Caleb Williams is great once the play breaks down. I'm not a Caleb Williams guy. Some people think he's a phenomenal prospect. I've broken down all his tape, put it in other videos. All I can tell you is I don't believe in him. Congratulations, Bears, you do. And so does the media, and so does every fan base out there. More power to you. First round picks, first overall picks, they flop at times. They hit home runs at times. It happens. You know, last season when we were ranking quarterbacks, I had Jake Haener number 1. I had Bryce Young number 2. And C.J. Stroud number 3. The rest of the world had C.J. Stroud at number 2. Yet every day I got to hear about C.J. Stroud. Rico missed on C.J. Stroud. I missed it by 1 spot. Could be missing the best quarterback in this draft by 1 spot. Because I think Jaden Daniels is special. I think he's very good. Having him go to Washington, I like it. Jaden Daniels was my number 2 quarterback on my board. And if you guys aren't aware, I do have a board. Now, my board is not meant to be a mock draft. I don't care where they get drafted. This is me ranking players based on how much I love them, okay? How much I love the players. And you'll see up here, Drake May is my favorite quarterback in the draft. By the way, these are my favorites up top. These guys, it's irrelevant where you go. It's made in a vacuum. It's my assessment of the player and who he is as a person. What team he goes to does not matter to me. Please understand that, okay? These are guys I've been following for 5, 6, 7 years since their high school days. I do not care about what team in the NFL drafts them. I just don't think that validates you to some extent. If I like you, I like you, and I rock with you your whole career. And I've told many young men this in the DMs when I post a video about them. It's just my approach to the draft and the players. But when you look down here, you see all these draft picks, and you see I had Jaden Daniels number 2, Michael Penix Jr. number 3. So think very highly of these young men. That being said, I think it's a no-fail here. You go and get Jaden Daniels. That's your business. The Patriots go and take Drake May, my number 1 quarterback. I love Drake May. I think he's a great athletic quarterback. He led North Carolina in rushing 2 years ago. He's a great passer. He processes the game right. I think he can make all the throws. He just looks John Elway-esque to me. He's tough, does his thing, and I like it. Okay, so those first 3 picks, they're fine. There's really nothing too glaring. And number 4 is a home run. You see it here. Only thing I worry about Marvin Harrison Jr. is he has criminal DNA. His father's a criminal. No, I'm joking. Look, you guys got to understand. I'm not joking that his father's a criminal. I have no concerns about Marvin Harrison Jr. I think he's a hell of a football player. I think the Cardinals had to take him. It's a no-brainer, and there's no debate on what's going on there. Okay? Now, at number 5, I want to applaud the Chargers for doing the right thing and taking Joe Alt. Now, Joe Alt's almost like 6'10", guys. He's enormous, and I say 6'10" because he's wearing cleats with a helmet. Once he puts all his gear on, he's 6'10". And Joe Alt is a dominant, and they have him at tackle, so I'm just telling you, he's a dominant offensive lineman. I don't care what position he plays. Joe Alt is so good that you had to take him 5, and that's Jim Harbaugh's first draft pick. And he's saying to yourself, yeah, he plays in the upper Northwest. He's seen this guy a lot, and he likes what he sees. I think the Chargers should have listened to anybody trying to trade up. They probably did. But this is a good pick. You can't go wrong. Malik Neighbors at 6. I think Malik Neighbors is a good wide receiver. I had him, I think, number 3 or 4 on my board. I'm not a huge Malik Neighbors guy. And he's good, and I'm just not a huge Malik Neighbors guy. Anytime you're underage with a gun, getting arrested downtown, and they sweep the charges under the rug, I just think of seriously character concerns. And I think about a young man going to New York. I'm not excited about it. I saw when they started passing out all these stories about his character, and people were like, what's the big deal? I've never heard anything. Da-da-da. And it's like, well, you didn't follow him in the offseason, and you didn't see them sweep arrests under the rug. Plexico Burris shot himself. I don't forget stuff like that, right? So when I see wide receivers going to New York, guys like Malik Neighbors in that big city life, I just don't like the fit. I really don't. You know that Rome or Dunes, right here, Rome or Dunes, is, I think, pretty equivalent in talent. I think they're pretty close to talent. Do you know how much of a difference Rome or Dunes is when it comes to character, when it comes to the approach to life decisions and things like that, the way he carries himself? I think Rome or Dunes is a phenomenally better prospect than Malik Neighbors. I think when you're drafting players at the beginning of the NFL draft in the first round, you are investing millions of dollars into somebody. You are investing your brand, your name into somebody. And you don't want that associated with any type of crimes, any type of substandard decision making. You don't want it like that. And I think that you have to hit it out the park and not draft anyone with any inkling of a character concern. Like, people will say, who cares, Rico? He's ghetto fast. He's smooth. He's this, he's that. I'm like, guys, listen. When you're trying to hire somebody, if you own a business and you were going to hire somebody, and it's a very prestigious position, it's a salary that others couldn't possibly have, and you do a background check on your potential hires at your business. If you did a background check and one of them came back with character concerns versus somebody else who has a sparkling clean record, who do you hire? Who do you invest in? Who do you believe in? And in any walk of life and in any business, you would hire the person with no criminal record. You would hire the person with a crystal clean character checklist of some sort. And I don't believe Malik Neighbors is that player. And at this upper echelon, you have to be that detail-oriented. And I think the Giants failed there. I think the Giants are neglecting certain concerns for the sake of, can you play football? And rightfully so. Some people will tell you, oh, well, all I care about is football. It's about winning games and all this shit. And it's like, yeah, you say that until he's suspended. You say that until he's arrested. You say that until he's Henry Ruggs. Like, you guys got to understand, I study these players. I've seen everything they've ever done in their careers. And when I see one go in the top 10 and they have concerns like that, I just don't get it. I personally don't get it. I would have taken Rome or Dunes at 6 and been thoroughly happy. If you wanted to address your wide receiver core, you could have taken a number of guys. I don't think that was the move. Yeah, I'm sure you guys will get excited about it. J.C. Latham, going from Alabama, going to Tennessee. You need a lineman. Congratulations, you took him. I think probably the best fit for them at that pick. When you start looking at it, it's like, all right, that's who they wanted to take. They're going to take a tackle. They had a bunch on the board, and they went and took J.C. I can't fault them. We'll see what happens. Known commodity at Alabama for many years. Probably a good pick. Number 8, Michael Penix Jr. Knee-jerk reaction, worst pick I've seen after thinking about it last night. Not the worst pick I've seen, but this is very on par for what the Atlanta Falcons do. The Atlanta Falcons drafted Bijan Robinson, number 8 last year. The year before that, they drafted Drake London, number 8. Look, it's not about who they took at number 8 3 years in a row. It's the fact that they're in the top 10 3 years in a row. You're consistently drafting in the top 10 because you are the Atlanta Falcons. You're consistently drafting in the top 10 because of the decisions you make. You know, there's a thing on Twitter here, and they're showing the GM explaining himself to Arthur Blank. And now it looks like a nervous explanation. Arthur Blank wants to know what's going on. I just paid Kirko Cousins all this money, and what's going on now? We need a professional lip reader to see what's going on. But he's using his hands to talk. He's doing this thing. And what's crazy is, if you watch the press conference after the draft, the Falcons came out and said, we're prepared for him to sit 4 to 5 years. Oh, that's great and all. That briefs well. It briefs well. I love Michael Penix Jr. Once again, my rankings, Michael Penix Jr. was my number 3 quarterback. He's my number 2 quarterback on my favorites list. That doesn't mean I have to love the team that drafted him. That doesn't mean I have to agree with the decision by the team that drafted him. Never forget that. Okay, last year, Israel Abanikanda was my number 1 running back. I loved everything about him. And then the Jets drafted him in the 5th round, and they didn't need him. They had 4 other running backs. I thought it was a terrible pick by the Jets. I thought it was a ridiculous decision. When I look at the Falcons, drafting a quarterback and you think you're going to sit him to develop him, we know that didn't work with the 49ers and Trey Lance. You have one proven anecdote, and anecdote is just a feel-good story, a one-off, just a variable out there of you have one outlier in Jordan Love, and then just a bunch of case studies where it didn't work out, where you put a guy on the bench and the locker room gets dissented. Half the locker room believes in the guy at practice versus the guy in the game. The minute Kirk Cousins throws an interception, he needs to look over his shoulder. Am I getting benched? Do you want to start this rookie over me? There's pressure from the media to start the rookie. We need to see what he looks like. And what people don't understand is in the NFL, when you get drafted in the 1st round, there's a 5th-year option. And if you don't know what a 5th-year option is, it means by your 5th year, the team needs to decide whether or not they want to extend your contract that 5th year or sign you to a 2nd contract. And when you get into those debates, that's when you start seeing players get franchise tagged. You can go study contracts and your approach to them, but one thing you can't do is condone a team paying a player, I don't know, $30 million, and he's never played. And that's going to happen if Michael Penix Jr. sits the bench for 4 to 5 years, as they suggest. The amount of money the Falcons will be putting into the quarterback position probably keeps Arthur Blank up at night. So I don't agree with the move. It's hard to fathom that you drafted a backup in the top 10 picks. It really is. And I say that because by the time Michael Penix Jr. does become the starter, if and when, then some of these draft picks, like J.C. Latham, like Olu Fashanu, I can't say names, some of these guys will be on their 3rd Pro Bowl. Some of these guys will be on their way to Hall of Fame careers, and you've never even started. Now, if Michael Penix is a great starter and he becomes a great quarterback, as I envision him being, then you applaud the pick. But then you question the general manager and him signing Kirk Cousins to such a huge deal. $96 million guaranteed, all this stuff. Like, why did you sign Kirk Cousins to this amazing deal if you knew you were going to draft this kid? You didn't have to do that. You know, a lot of people label draft picks a bust. And then they laugh at them and point at them and say, that player sucks. And I want to tell you, the team that drafted that player sucks. The team leadership and decision makers and administrators, they suck. The guy who orchestrated the deal to trade all his draft picks for Trey Lance is a bigger bust than Trey Lance. When you misevaluate talent and pay the wrong guys, and give up draft capital and currency for a player, and that player doesn't pan out, the player doesn't suck. You suck. So, congratulations, Falcons. You have drafted in the top 10 for 3 years in a row now. And the reason you keep drafting in the top 10 is because you make decisions in free agency and the draft that are Bush League, that are seconds, that are a lower tier. This is a terrible draft pick. The players that were left on the board were amazing. You have a defensive-minded coach. You have Raheem Morris, who knows what to do with defenders, develops them, gets the most out of them, and you had a prime opportunity to take the top defender in the draft, whoever you judge that to be. And instead, you take a project because the GM wants to buy time. Let me say this. Your general manager wants to buy time. Now, he won't be fired until we see whether or not Michael Penix Jr. pans out. That's right. Terry Fontenot just hired somebody. See, they don't even know. Falcons GM is talking. That's Terry Fontenot is the GM. And he just hired somebody that keeps him hired in the position because you don't know whether or not he hit a home run. It's the same thing the Colts did last year. The Colts drafted Anthony Richardson. And what it did was save everybody in the room about 3 to 4 more years of employment. Because you missed on Matt Ryan. Phillip Rivers, 1 year and you got rid of him. So you're missing on Carson Wentz. You miss on all these quarterbacks, and you're about to get fired because you keep making mistakes in the offseason. So then you go and you just draft a young guy and go, yo, we drafted a young guy. Give me 3-4 years to see if he works out. Now Fontenot's out there going, well, we're going to let him sit for 4 years. Up to 4 and 5 years. Without actually saying he'll need a second contract of an absorbent amount of money. And rookie contracts, they're regulated by the NFL Players Association and the draft cap. Okay, I don't even want to get into it. If you want to go search it, you can. I've read the fucking whole NFL Players Association collective bargaining agreement. And in there, they have the scale for what rookies make. And let me just use a number just so you feel comfortable with math, okay? Let's just say a rookie's making $8 million a year, a first-round pick. Top 10, $8 million a year. When you get to that fifth-year option, it literally jumps to like $26 million. It'll be so much higher in 4 years with the salary cap. The salary cap is determined by the total revenue of the league. So the total revenue of the league is X amount of money. 52% or 51.5% go to the owners, 48.5% go to the players. So you take the total revenue, let's say the NFL makes, I don't know, $8 billion. You cut that in half essentially, and then you take that $4 billion and you divide it by 32, and that's your salary cap. So it all depends on what the revenue is going to be in about 4 years to determine what the salary cap is going to be, and then that determines what percentage of the cap is going to various positions. There'll be veteran minimums. There'll be draft position, graduated scale, all this stuff. What I'm telling you is you will have to be paying Michael Penix Jr. $30 million if he's on the bench, if you think you're going to play. This is the same issue the Bears had with Justin Fields. After X amount of years of starting him, you had to make a decision. Are we going to pay him as a starter big money, or are we just going to extend him for 1 more year? And the Bears couldn't make that decision, so they just got rid of him. And they passed that onus onto somebody else. But what you really need to understand is who the fuck drafted him. Because that's the person that needs to be fired. Because we didn't make our decision within the next 4 to 5 years. You just wasted a first-round pick. And if I go back 4 years, 5 years, and look at the first round and who was still available when you were missing on a quarterback, i.e. missing on a quarterback, who's still available? Best overall player in this draft to me is Brock Bowers. Did you need Brock Bowers? Probably not. But you could have taken him, and he could be on the field immediately. He's a weapon all over the place. We'll talk about it. So Romar Dunes comes off the board at 9. I think it's a great pick. I love the kid's character. I love his production. Yes, he ran a little slow. People are worried about, but if you go watch tape on him every single Saturday, that's a player. Okay, Romar Dunes is a player. Matching him up with Caleb Williams sounds like a match made in heaven for them, right? You want to do that? Fine. I probably would have taken a tackle here. I probably would have taken a lineman that doesn't flop, a guard, things of that nature. You know, the best guard in the draft is number 20, Troy here, and I think I would have taken Troy Fatanu way up here. I would have taken him somewhere. I think Troy's so good. He's versatile. He can play both positions. No Diddy, but I really like Troy. J.J. McCarthy at 10. J.J. McCarthy at 10. I don't even understand this move. The Vikings trade up to get J.J. McCarthy. It's weird. Some of you might not be old enough to remember Ken Dorsey. Ken Dorsey was the starting quarterback on all those great Miami teams. And Ken Dorsey won 30 games. Like, Ken Dorsey was him. And he's just distributing the ball, doing his thing. When I look at J.J. McCarthy, I see nothing spectacular. I see nothing all that amazing. I don't get it. And I don't think that's a top 10 pick. You had an opportunity to replace Danielle Hunter. You had an opportunity to go get one of the best defenders in the draft, anybody else, and you go and take J.J. McCarthy. I understand you have a hole at quarterback, but you could have taken a quarterback in the 3rd or 4th round equivalent to J.J. McCarthy. Like, I don't think he's that much better than the other quarterbacks. I really don't. I think it's a bad pick. I think it's a reach. There was no way you should be taking quarterbacks up here at 10 and 12 with the talent still on the board, with these guys who are going to be career Pro Bowlers, 10-year Pro Bowlers. Like, seriously, it doesn't make any sense to me. Congratulations. Olu Fashanu, Penn State offensive tackle. Olu's first name, by the way, is extremely long. It's much longer than that. Shout out to the Jets. You went out and got an offensive tackle that I think will start for you for the next 10 years. It's good. You know, there was a post on Twitter talking about what positions flop the most in the first round versus which ones don't. And the number one position that doesn't flop in the first round is center. And then it was guard, and then it was tackle. So just offensive linemen always get a second contract. They're there. If you get them in the first round, they tend to be really good. I think it was a 91% hit rate for centers. And they might have only had one center not make it out of the last 15 in the last 20 years. It was a 20-year span. Since the year 2003, they looked at all the drafts, and they said, my goodness, who doesn't flop? By the way, first-round wide receivers, flopping 27% on make it. To a second contract is how we determine if you flopped or not. So, good pick by the Jets. I'm not mad at it. And then the Broncos literally shit the bed, bro. Who's the kid from the Jets that just came over? What's his name? You guys know who I'm talking about. What's his name? I'm forgetting the name. Zach Wilson. Sorry. I got too many things going on in my head over here. Zach Wilson goes to the Broncos, and now you just used a 12th overall pick for Bo Nix. Now, I think very highly of Bo Nix. I actually do. Bo Nix, SEC Freshman of the Year, got better every single year while in the SEC. Fans can say what they want, but go check the stats. Go watch the film. He got better every single year, and then he transferred to Oregon, and he just kept building. It was the first time he followed an offensive coordinator and got continuity, right? Playing for Kenny Dillingham as the offensive coordinator. Thought he played well. This last year, he had an embarrassment of riches at quarterback and wide receiver. That's not the case when you get to the Broncos. The Broncos just drafted a guy that's going to compete with Zach Wilson to be the starter. I'm under a firm approach to the NFL draft. Let me explain to you guys. My approach to the NFL draft is I sit down with my scouting department. I sit down with my evaluators of talent. And I say, we need to make a board of players that make our team better. And the first 3 rounds, we are finding starters. You better find starters. Guys better than people on R53. People who can contribute now. people without character concerns or injury concerns. Get me bona fide starters. And then in rounds 4, 5, and 6, get me potential guys. Get me people who are going to compete and fight for roster spots. Get me guys who are late bloomers. Maybe an offensive lineman that just moved over from defensive line after 1 year in college and nobody knows about him. An FCS All-American. Get me something. And then the 7th round, let's just shoot for the fence. Get me a dude that's injury prone, but could be remarkable if he stays healthy. Something like that. Like, that's my approach to the draft. But my approach is we're getting out of this draft with 3 starters. Bona fide. Find me 3 guys. And you do all that preparation and all that studying, and you hire, like these scouting departments got 20, 30 employees. In the scouting department alone, on some of these NFL teams, player personnel, just development and all this stuff, they have 20, 30 people making X amount of money. And when they draft people, half of them don't even make the team. You got all year, multiple years, to identify the talent that you want to draft, and half of them don't even make the team. I'm telling you, last year, Dolphins, four picks. And they cut 2 of them. That means we paid all this money, and you couldn't find me 4 guys better than what we have on our team? So you go and get a quarterback in Bo Nix that I think is marginally better than whoever you have. You go and get a quarterback in Bo Nix that you think is going to be your starter moving forward. I'm going to tell you that if you look at my big board, Bo Nix is here. I have him ahead of Caleb Williams. I told you I don't think very highly of Caleb Williams. That's a whole nother subjective, argumentative conversation. But what I'm trying to tell you is Bo Nix is very comparable to Spencer Rattler, Michael Pratt, Carter Bradley, Austin Reed. They're all the same to me. They're all potential guys who can go in there and put in some reps and get it working. The only difference is these guys will be going in the 4th and 5th round. Bo Nix ain't that great. I mean, Bo Nix is very comparable to Aiden O'Connell. Like, you can find one of these dudes anywhere. I don't understand it. Like, let me give you the example. Bo Nix is the 5th quarterback taken off the board or the 6th. You just took the 6th quarterback in the top 12 picks. And the very next pick is the greatest tight end to come out of college in the last 20 years. Think about that. You just took the 6th quarterback in this draft who's going to struggle to beat out Zach Wilson. They're gonna battle it out, and you're going to give him the job because he's the 1st round pick. Zach Wilson was a 3rd overall pick, 2nd overall, whatever he was. Are you kidding me? Some of these picks flop hard. But the very next guy taken is Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers. A unicorn. You know how good Brock Bowers is? Do you have any inkling of how good Brock Bowers is? The Raiders do. The Raiders have Michael Mayer. They drafted a guy last year at tight end. One of the top tight ends in the draft. They got to picking at 13 and said, yo, that's the best available player in this whole fucking draft. What are we doing? Go get that guy. I don't care who we drafted last year. I don't care who we got in this room. Talk to the scouting department, identified 3 starters, 3 guys better than anybody in our 53. Oh, who's on the board? Brock Bowers. Oh, Rico, I think it's a bad pick because they already had a tight end. They drafted one last year. Yeah? You think the Cardinals were wrong when they took Kyler Murray number 1 overall? And the year before they took Josh Rosen 8th overall? They took Josh Rosen 8th overall. They got him into camp and said, man, this guy sucks. We're going to take a different guy. Nobody thinks that was a mistake. Brock Bowers, best player in the draft. I think he's amazing. He's won 2 national titles on his back. Conversions on his shit. That dude's a ball. You can just get him the ball any way you want. Stop it. And he's from California, so he likes to go back to the West Coast. It's got to be excited. They got themselves a player, man. As soon as I saw that pick, the Raiders won the 1st round. The Raiders won but I was going to feel that way about anybody who drafted Brock Bowers. That guy's amazing. Fucking unicorn. Watch the tape, man. Bo Nix before Brock Bowers? If we were picking teams out back right now, if we took all our shirts off, all our jerseys off, we didn't know who we were, and we were just building football teams, and everybody's having tryouts, and you go to pick teams, middle school. Hey, I don't know if you kids know this. Back in the day, we used to play football in the street. And if you had to pick out who you wanted, you ain't picking fucking Bo Nix before Brock Bowers. That dude's a gladiator. Tripping, bro. It's the best player on the best team for the last 3 years. Let me make that very clear. Brock Bowers is the best player on the best team for the last 3 years. There is no debate. Next, you get Talisi Fagoa. Nobody wanted this pick here for the Saints. I'm going to tell you, he's a complete stud. Gave him 1 sack his whole career. That dude's a stud. Oregon State offensive linemen are just tough. You get some of these guys, I can't pronounce the names, I apologize. Some of these Pacific Islander players in the Pac-12, they're just special, man. They're mean. He's going to be a starter for many, many years, as long as, barring injury. That was a great pick. Latu Latau, first defender off the board, 15th overall by the Colts. I applaud them for this. The record for most offensive players drafted in a row to start a draft was 7. This went all the way to 15. This is nuts. Latu Latau, if you didn't know, I'm going to show you guys something. If you check my big board, and my big board doesn't change once the draft starts, but I had Latu down here at, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on the defensive line. But he's number 2 on my favorites list. Meaning I'm pulling for this dude like you wouldn't believe. I'm a fan all day long. I think very highly of this man. I love his pass rushing skills. I love his athleticism. I can't even describe it to you guys. I'm so excited for him. And the Colts went out and got the guy. They couldn't have dreamed that Latu would still be on the board. Or more importantly, let me just say this. They probably thought he would be on the board. And he was tops on their board. Because they anticipated some of these other guys already being drafted. And they didn't care. They didn't want these other guys. That's a fact. They wanted Latu. Now, the Seahawks go and get Byron Murphy II. It's a huge man, very stout. My number 1 defensive lineman in the draft. Number 1 guy on my board. If you're down here at the rankings, just watching him on tape, occupies a lot of space, plays really heavy. Think he's a future stalwart on the defense. I like everything about Byron Murphy. He's got beast tattooed on his forearm. Okay, he's an absolute beast. If you've seen his mother, you know his DNA is beastly. That lady, beautiful lady. I was just watching them all hug each other, and I go, man, look where he gets his girth. Like, that dude's real. So shout out to him, Byron Murphy, just a monster. Next is Dallas Turner. Let me say something. Dallas Turner ran a 4.440. And he played at Alabama, arguably the best defender on Alabama. And you run a 4.440 as an edge rusher, that's freak status. That's Javon Curse status. And you drop in the draft. Now, you drop to 17. You're the 3rd overall defensive player taken. How bad do you got to be in interviews to drop to 17? How bad do you got to be in interviews to drop as a 4.440 guy in Alabama? You got to be horrendous in interviews. You had to go to the interview and the team had to hear everything you said and went, nah. That dude's fast, but nah. That dude's been dominating in the SEC, but nah. We don't want him. Broncos are like, no, fuck that, man. Get Bo Nix. That's wild. And look, I wasn't there for the interviews, but that's the only thing I can come across. Because on the film, Dallas Turner is a player. On the film, Dallas Turner is a beast. Athletically off the charts. But he's got to interview. It's my only assumption. He interviews like fucking, what's his name? Who just left, who couldn't get a head coaching job, and now he's with Eric Bieniemy, sleeping with the enemy Bieniemy. Yeah, Eric Bieniemy. I think Dallas Turner went to the Eric Bieniemy school of interviews. Straight up. There's no other way around it. Wild. Congratulations to the Vikings. You found your replacement for Danielle Hunter, and I'm happy for you. But I wonder if he fell because of character concerns, if he fell because of his inability to grasp concepts or maybe not interview well and answer questions. I don't know. It can't be stuff on the field. Everything on the film looks crisp and great. Like, that's nuts. He's better than some of the players drafted ahead of him. Let's just make that very clear right now. But if you got character concerns, I don't want to invest millions in you either. Just saying. Amarius Mims, good kid, quiet, humble kid. I want to say something about Amarius Mims. Enormous, okay? Enormous. A lot of potential. Coming out of high school, I think he played at Bleckley, and it's a very small school here in Georgia, 1A, and they're purple. And when he was coming out of school, a big Amarius Mims, they talked about him like that every single day on GPB Sports, Georgia Public Broadcasting Sports. I know every Georgia player. If you played high school in Georgia, I watched your whole career. It's just what I do. It's part of my platform on TikTok. And I do a weekly roundup on Georgia high school football. There's 400-something schools. I talk about all of them. And Amarius Mims is one of those kids who dominated in high school, went to Georgia, and for a couple years there, I was frustrated for him because he wasn't in the starting lineup. He was so big. I'm like, man, I thought that guy was going to start. He looked so good. And then he eventually got in the starting lineup, and he did exactly what we expected, which is become dominant. You know, I think he hit the portal at one point and then came back in. Yeah, he hit the portal. That's right. And they were going to pay him. They offered him some money, and then he snitched, and then he went back to Georgia. Amarius Mims is going to be a starter for a long time. I think he's very young, if I remember correctly. He might even be like 20 years old. Dude's a beast, man. He reminds me a lot of Tyron Smith. So probably not as mean, but Amarius Mims is going to be a starter for a long time. I think the Bengals did great. I thought he was going to drop all the way to the Cowboys. So once I saw the Cowboys dropping in the draft, and we'll talk about it, they kept trading back. See how they took a tight end and Tyler Guyton? I think they wanted Amarius Mims. But because Mims got off the board at 18, they immediately just started dropping and saying, well, we can still get our guy later. We're still going to address our tackle needs, but they wanted Amarius Mims. I'm telling you, they did. He's a good player. Jared Verse at 19, replacing a legend, getting on the defensive line. He is an edge rusher, but he's a big edge rusher. I love the pick. I think Jared Verse coming out of Albany, an FCS All-American, transferring to Florida State, proving FCS All-Americans can play at any echelon, coming back for an extra year. Remember, last year he could have entered the draft last year, and he decided, no, I'm going to come back and help lead the team to an undefeated regular season. I just like everything Jared Verse does. Yeah, I think he's a stud. Good hard worker, and to get him at 19 is pretty nuts. At this point, I started looking at this and going, man, there's some real value here. I think the Steelers knocked it out the park with Troy. Shout out to them. Chop Robinson at 21. Not a big fan of the move, but more power to him. I don't think Chop Robinson belongs in Miami. It's a whole other story. But you could have had probably Terran Arnold, Nate Wiggins, Quinyon Mitchell. You could have got a corner that could have worked every single day and gotten better going up against some of the best wide receivers in the league. I think metal sharpens metal, and you had an opportunity there to develop one of these young corners just in practice every day in reps. And maybe Chop Robinson plays well and maybe he does good, but there are times Chop Robinson disappears on tape. I guess every player has that issue. You know, it is what it is. Quinyon Mitchell going at 22 to the Eagles. The Eagles have been striking out left and right. Last year's draft, I was very critical of all the Georgia Bulldogs they drafted. I was like, it doesn't look good. And people thought I was crazy. They're going to win the Super Bowl. They're one away from the Super Bowl. Yeah, we saw how that panned out. They didn't win shit. Getting Quinyon Mitchell, imagine that, man. The best corner in the draft is Quinyon Mitchell, and he plays at Toledo. Imagine the best corner in the MAC. The best corners in the MAC, and you might be a good corner at Clemson or Alabama. You're not getting drafted before this guy. Now, I've watched a lot of film on Quinyon Mitchell. You guys can't tell me nothing. You can't tell me nothing. I've watched every MAC game and live streamed them on YouTube. You can go check the live tab. With the MVPs, we live stream every single weekday game. And I think now I do it on the Discord server, but I used to do it on YouTube for free with the MVPs. And something we would talk about is how non-dependable Toledo is as a team. But one of their good players is Quinyon Mitchell. He's very athletic. He does well on tape. I think he lacks some dexterity and some fast twitch for a corner, but that's still just evaluating the player, and I don't want to get into all that. I just want to talk about the pick itself. I thought the Eagles did well. I don't think they imagined he'd still be on the board at 22. So, not a reach. Just surprising to take him over known commodities who played at a much higher echelon against much better defenses or offenses in opposition. I do think he has the dexterity of a rhino. And if you don't know what that means, I think he lacks certain fast twitch, and you need that as a corner. And I don't think he has it. Brian Thomas Jr., my number 2 wide receiver on my board, going to Jacksonville. They found the replacement for the gambler. That's cool. I would say Brian Thomas Jr., or is the gambler the other kid, his brother? Nonetheless, they find the replacement for Ridley. Brian Thomas Jr., complete stud, absolute monster. I think he's a deep threat, very strong at the top of his routes. People say, oh, Rico, he's got a limited route tree. Whatever. He's one of the reasons Jaden Daniels won the Heisman. I want to make this very clear. Jaden Daniels won the Heisman because he had 2 amazing, dominant wide receivers, and Brian Thomas Jr. is one of them. Brian Thomas Jr. ran a 4.3. At his size, that's nuts. He is DK Metcalf-ish. DK Metcalf-ish. And to get that at 23, I think they did well. Shout out to them. The Lions go and get Terry and Arnold. I know he was mad. He was dropping, and he goes at 24. But you end up in a city where the draft is being held. You get an ovation. It's got to feel good. You're going to eat kneecaps. I like Terry Arnold. He's one of my favorite corners in the draft. Good pick. I give that an A+. It's better than a lot of the picks in front of him. Better than a lot of people. Jordan Morgan going to the Green Bay Packers. And this has been the running joke for a while. Jordan Morgan going to the Packers. The running joke is the Packers scout room watches my channel. They have all my videos. They watch my channel. And if you watch my channel, you saw my draft list. Here's my top 10. And you saw Jordan Morgan right there. Remember last year, they took everybody I said to take. Their whole draft is just a bunch of players I talked about. Well, there's Jordan Morgan in my top 10. Congratulations. You took Jordan Morgan, and I think very highly of Jordan Morgan. I don't think it's a bad pick. Boring pick for sure. Not a bad pick. No way. I know some people were screaming out, get some speed, get this, get that. Nah. Go get a guy that's going to start for the next 10 years. And I think that's Jordan Morgan. Remember that. Graham Barton, best center in the draft. I had him my number 2 center. I'm not trying to be different. It's just that when I evaluated the centers, I wasn't so sold on Graham Barton like that. I just wasn't, right? So I'm on Powers all day. Oregon center. But congratulations to Graham Barton going to the GOAT. Going to give snaps to the GOAT. And now Baker Mayfield has a center in front of him he has to learn a new snap count from and, fill his nuts on the back of your hand type deal. If you guys don't know quarterbacks, the back of their hand smells so awful because they put it up against the nutsack of that center. And you take different snaps when you're under center. Yes, everything's shotgun nowadays and all this, but I know when you take a snap under the quarterback, guys, trust me. Ugh, it's horrendous. Congratulations. Darius Robinson, edge rusher out of Missouri. I don't think it's a good pick. I don't think it's a good pick at all. Darius Robinson's not in my top 10 for a reason. I think he's a tweener. I know they say he's a Swiss Army knife. He's a weapon. He can do all these different things. That's just code for, he's not good enough at any individual position. And going in the first round, I just don't think he's good. Nah, I don't like it. There's other players. There's other players on my board that I think are better. So I give that one an F. Xavier Worthy, and I'm talking about at the edge rusher position. Xavier Worthy, wide receiver, going to Kansas City. Now, he's the fastest player in the draft, and everybody's excited about it. I'm going to tell you, Xavier Worthy can't catch the football. But if he does, and when he does, he's dynamite. He's gone. But if you've ever looked at the Chiefs and some of the games they lost, it's because they had a wide receiver who couldn't catch passes. Right? So I just want you guys to remember that. Yes, you got the fastest guy, and you took a flyer on a dude at the end of the first round. There's other receivers to take that can catch. But you go and take potential at the end. That just tells me you don't have a whole lot of needs. You don't have a whole lot of things you need to address. More power to you. Tyler Guyton going to 29. A little bit of a reach, but it's fine. They did trade back twice to get that 29 for the Cowboys. Taking an Oklahoma kid. I don't think Tyler Guyton's like that, but I mean, he is. That's a good pick at 29. I think it's smart for them to trade back knowing they were going to get him. Once they lost Mims, they knew they were getting him, so they just kept trading back. No one else was going to take a tackle. It's good stuff. Good stuff. It had to be a little scary that Green Bay took Jordan Morgan in front of him because I know Morgan wasn't on their board. The Cowboys don't watch my channel. That's why they're not winning. Green Bay's all up in my channel. So there you go. Thank you very much for joining my team. I appreciate you guys. Nate Wiggins. I love Nate Wiggins. Good corner. Athletic. Long. Lean. Some say the leanest. Y'all don't know the reference. I'm done with you. Nonetheless, Nate Wiggins, complete stud. I think very highly of Nate Wiggins. No production as a corner, though. And what I mean by that is he doesn't have ball skills. No pause needed. He doesn't have ball skills. He doesn't get picks. He doesn't get interceptions. He barely gets about balls batted down. He's just always kind of there. They don't throw his way because he's in the right position, but he's not a high production corner. And I don't like not high production corners. You get frustrated with them as a fan. You can watch the game and be like, he was right there. Why didn't he make the pick? That's your boy. I love him, though. I think he works hard. I like him. Good kid. Good character guy. Good locker room guy. I'm excited to see what happens to him in Baltimore, but that's not a bad pick at 30. I got to imagine they didn't think Nate Wiggins was going to be there at 30. I think they were going to have to settle for Kool-Aid, and instead they got Nate Wiggins, and they're not drinking the Kool-Aid. Speaking of drinking the Kool-Aid, Slick Rick, Rico, Slick Rick, Ricky Pearsall at 31. I give it an F. I give it a bona fide F. I don't give a shit what you guys say, what contested catches he makes. Rico, he was so good at Florida. No, he wasn't. He was just the best receiver at Florida among scrub receivers at Florida. Ricky Pearsall is an Arizona State kid, man. Ricky Pearsall is not in my top 10, not on my 5 favorites. I don't care. Scouts miss every single year. They miss multiple times within their own team's draft. They do 7 players they got to make, and 3 of them get cut. I'm telling you right now, I don't understand it. I'm a huge Ladd McConkey guy. I think Ladd McConkey is just as comparable and just as good. I like Troy Franklin, Tez Walker, Adonai Mitchell, Xavier Leggett. But you guys are going to applaud a team, and I don't know what it is, bro. I don't know if the 49ers are just out to only draft white skill players. Maybe they have a racial agenda. Shout out to Lynch. They just go, hey, we're going to get the best white guys you've ever seen, and we're going to make it work. We're going to think out the box. Well, just wait till they get Cooper DeJean. It's outrageous, bro. I thought it was terrible. I thought it was a terrible pick. I don't think he's like that. Don't think he's like that. If we had tryouts and we had a bunch of wide receivers out there running routes and trying out, you're not picking Rick. You're not picking Slick Rick on the team, bro. He's got next. I'm not with it. Not even a little bit. I thought it was a terrible pick. Thought they would take Kool-Aid anyways, but that's a whole other story. I thought it was a terrible pick. Xavier Leggett at 32, taking a guy and trading back into the first round to get him. What I'll say is the Bills were going to pick. We all know the Bills need a wide receiver. We all know the Bills want to replace Diggs and have to replace Diggs. It looks like they're going to get Adonai Mitchell at this point, right? That's what's left. And knowing they were probably going to take Xavier Leggett, the Carolina Panthers trade back into the first round to take that away from the Bills. So they had to pay to get a receiver that they coveted and wanted because he was not going to be there. They would have taken Leggett. Leggett's that good. So it's cool. I thought Leggett was going to go in the first round. I talked about it on a previous video with the MVPs. So that's my rundown of all the picks in the first round and my reaction to it, my knee-jerk reaction. Best available, I'll talk about this right now. I'm not trying to guess where players go, but I will tell you that Cooper DeJean was never a guy I saw in the first round. Anybody telling you he was, they were lying to themselves. He's coming off of a major injury. I think he looks limited in his mobility and his dexterity. Once again, fast twitch. I love Kool-Aid much better than him. I love Adonai Mitchell. Newton, I thought, was a first-rounder for sure, so we're going to see what happens with that, and I don't know why he dropped. I'm big on Ladd McConkey. I'm not big on Ennis Rackstraw. Slow. I'm not big on Ernest. And Ennis Rackstraw, oh, my goodness. If I can show you guys something. Look at that. It's in purple. I've looked at this before. He's not been drafted, so hopefully his college stats come up. But, yeah, look. This is a guy in college 1 interception. In his whole career, he has 1 interception. Played every year. I don't like corners with 1 interception. I don't like corners who had double-digit passes deflected and then none the next year. Okay? So 1 interception in your whole life after high school. He got 1 more than me, bro. And you did it against Abilene Christian. The only time you got an interception in your life is against some dude named McIver. Maverick McIver is the only guy you've picked off. That doesn't even make sense to me, bro. Like, that's what I'm trying to get at here. Is before we go and say some of these guys are great, go watch the film. Because that's what I do. I just want to show you that fun fact. Because I obviously watched the film on all these guys. Another guy I don't believe in here is Marshawn Nealon. I don't think he's very good. I don't understand his ranking and what anybody sees in him. I'm not there. Some of the guys that are on my list that are some of my favorites are Keon Coleman being slow. I get it. Keon Coleman's on my chart. Edgerrin Cooper's on the chart. And TJ Tampa, Christian, and my number 1 linebacker, Peyton Wilson. All these guys should be going in the second round. I wouldn't draft Javon Bullard. He is a very good safety. I wouldn't draft him. Has a DUI. I don't invest money in people who make poor decisions, so I wouldn't draft him right off the rip. Like, you can take Bullard, I would take Nubin. Difference, right? There's my guy. Jackson Powers Johnson is going to be a great center in this NFL, and he's going to have a long career, and people don't know it. And he's down here at 23. Probably going to fall somewhere in the second round. But, like, there's really good players. I want people to understand something. You can find absolute monsters in the second and third round. Rook here, this dude's a monster, guys. Rook's going second round. These are great players that are still available in the second and third round. So don't start thinking, oh, if you weren't a first rounder, you're a bum. No, you're not. You can be a first rounder and be a total flop, just so we're clear. And I feel like that's the way it goes. Okay, number 8 is not good. We know that. Shout out to the Falcons for making yet another terrible decision in the top 10 like they do every single year. And they'll probably be drafted in the top 10 for a while. Your friends don't know, but Rico knows. Peace, y'all.